Today, we're digging into a big one, Adam Smith's warning, and the 3 things he believed the state is actually for. All right, let's get right to it. Here's what you need to know. Adam Smith gave the state 3 jobs. That's it, and only 3. Welcome to the MoniLytics channel, where money meets research. You know, when most people hear Adam Smith, they immediately think laissez-faire, right? The invisible hand, a totally hands-off government. But that's really just a caricature. The reality is a whole lot more nuanced and honestly, way more interesting. So to really get Smith, you have to start where he started. He called it the obvious and simple system of natural liberty. Think of this as the default setting for society. It's a world where you, me, everyone, we're all free to go about our business and pursue our own goals so long as we're not breaking the law. For Smith, any government intervention was a step away from that default, and it had to have a seriously good reason behind it. So what were those seriously good reasons? Well, Smith boiled it all down to just 3. These are what he called the 3 duties of the sovereign. And listen, this wasn't some casual wish list. For him, this was the entire, complete job description for a government. Let's dig into each one. Okay, let's kick things off with duty number 1, which is probably the most fundamental of all: defense. You have to remember, Smith wasn't some ivory tower idealist. He was a realist, writing in the 18th century, when Europe was pretty much always at war. He knew peace wasn't something you could just take for granted. And he made a really practical point. You can't expect a bunch of farmers and shopkeepers to just drop everything and become an effective army overnight. No way. A modern commercial society, he argued, needs a professional, full-time military. For him, this wasn't even a debate. It was an absolutely essential job for the state, protecting its citizens and the commerce that fuels the whole system. All right, so if the first duty is about protecting us from outside threats, the second duty is all about protecting us from, well, each other. Once the borders are secure, you've got to make sure there's order inside those borders. This is what Smith called the duty of establishing an exact administration of justice. Look, that whole system of natural liberty we talked about, it doesn't just happen on its own. It needs a solid foundation to stand on. And that foundation is a reliable, fair legal system. I mean, think about it. If contracts can be broken without consequence, if your property can be stolen, the whole engine of the economy just seizes up. So the state's job here is crystal clear. Be the impartial referee. Enforce the rules, but don't get on the field and start playing for one team. Okay, now for the third duty. And this is the one that gets a little tricky. It's easily the most debated and honestly the most misunderstood part of Smith's entire philosophy. It often gets twisted into a kind of blank check for all sorts of government spending, but Smith himself was actually incredibly precise about what he meant. So here's his test. A real public work, in his words, isn't just any old project that seems like a good idea. Nope, it has to be something that, while being a huge benefit to everybody, is just so expensive or so difficult to profit from that no private individual or company would ever build it themselves. See? It's not a blank check at all. It's actually a really, really high bar, designed specifically for situations where the market just can't get the job done. And he had some pretty concrete examples in mind. We're talking about things like major roads, bridges, canals, ports, the big-ticket infrastructure that helps all of commerce run smoothly but costs a fortune to build. And here's an interesting one. Smith also looped basic education into this. He argued that you can't have a thriving modern economy if your population can't read, write, and do basic math. So we've covered the to-do list, but just as important, maybe even more important, was Smith's do-not-do list. Because for him, defining the state's role was all about drawing very clear, very firm boundaries to prevent government overreach. This quote right here is one of his most famous, and it really gets to the heart of his skepticism about collusion. He was no fool. He knew that whenever people from the same industry get together, the conversation almost always turns to how they can rig the system to raise prices. But here's the crucial part. His warning wasn't just for the businessmen. It was a direct warning to the government. Stay out of it. Don't help them conspire, and you definitely shouldn't be giving them special favors or monopolies. It all comes back to that referee idea. For Smith, the government's role is to protect the game of competition itself, not to pick which team should win. The second the state starts handing out monopolies or special privileges, it hurts the public. Innovation dies, prices go up. But real, open competition, that's the engine that creates wealth for the entire society. Smith had another major warning for the state, and this one was about debt. specifically going into debt to pay for wars. He saw this as incredibly dangerous because it creates a kind of illusion. When a government borrows to fund a war, the public doesn't feel the true cost right away. It makes it way too easy for people to support long, costly conflicts. Essentially, it's a financial trick that encourages reckless decisions by hiding the real price tag. Okay, so let's put it all together. We have the 3 duties and we have the big warnings. What does the state that Adam Smith envisioned actually look like? This is the bottom line. The state Smith described isn't weak, not at all. It's just limited. It needs to be incredibly strong in its core functions, defending the country, ensuring justice, and building essential infrastructure. But outside of that, it needs to be strictly hands-off. No meddling with private industry, no playing favorites with monopolies, no massive war debts, and no trade barriers. It's a government that's a heavyweight in its own small corner, and a lightweight everywhere else. And that really leaves us with a big question for today, doesn't it? I mean, we're dealing with global supply chains, AI, all sorts of complex challenges Smith couldn't have dreamed of. So the question for you to think about is this. Can this 250-year-old blueprint for limited government still guide us? Or is it just a relic from a much, much simpler world? If you found this research valuable, please like the video, subscribe to MoniLytics, and check out the affiliate links in the description to support the channel. And stay tuned for our next deep dive, where we'll be shifting our focus to Can You Be Rich and Good? The Missing Chapter of 1776.